Deion and I, we were very competitive. He was the flashy, flamboyant, type of defensive back. And yes, I wanted to get up in the skin.
And both of you were fined $7,500. Basically, I guess they're saying that Sanders was the instigator, but both you guys were at fault, so you both got a small fine.
He was scared to death. He knew he was going to lose, but he talked his way out of it and still looked like primetime. Like he just made me look bad.
For decades, NFL legends couldn't stand Deion Sanders. The hate was so deep it nearly turned physical. Jerry Rice finally reveals what made them despise primetime so much. From teammates turning on each other to destroying careers behind closed doors, the reasons they'll never forgive Sanders are beyond shocking. I've got the full story. Let's break it down. The rivalry that kept Jerry Rice awake at night. Picture this, it's 1989, and Jerry Rice, already establishing himself as the most prolific pass catcher in NFL history, is preparing for another season with the San Francisco 49ers. With 1,549 receptions, 22,895 yards, and 197 touchdowns over 20 seasons, Rice had become the unquestioned king of his position. But then, like a lightning bolt striking the league, came Deion Sanders, the flashy, flamboyant rookie cornerback from Florida State, who would challenge everything Rice thought he knew about football. Sanders entered the NFL with the Atlanta Falcons as a brash speed demon capable of shutting down elite receivers, armed with track star speed, boasting a reported 4.27-second 40-yard dash. What made Sanders particularly infuriating for receivers like Rice wasn't just his athletic ability, it was his complete transformation of what it meant to be a defensive back in the NFL. The rivalry ignited immediately, and Rice would later admit something that shocked the football world. In a revealing 2023 Sports Illustrated column, Rice confessed, "There was a time when I hated Deion Sanders. To be clear, it wasn't Deion the man. It was Deion the competitor, Deion the opponent. This wasn't just competitive dislike. This was something deeper, something that would consume Rice's thoughts and reshape his entire approach to the game."
Deion and I, we were very competitive. He was the flashy, flamboyant, type of defensive back. And yes, I wanted to get up in the skin. Because I think football is a total team sport. Deion came to us. He did some great things on the football field. He was an excellent corner, and he helped us to win a Super Bowl, but everyone made it seem like it was all about Deion. Well, when he went to the Cowboys, I knew it was going to be a big time rivalry, all over again. And I think so many people connected because they wanted to see us do battle. And I was able to win some of those battles.
But what exactly made Sanders so different, so maddening, so uniquely challenging that he could get under the skin of someone as composed and professional as Jerry Rice? The answer lies in understanding what Sanders represented to the traditional NFL establishment of the early 1990s. Sanders didn't just play cornerback, he revolutionized the position. With 8 Pro Bowl selections and 53 interceptions, 8 returned for touchdowns, Sanders combined elite athleticism with an unprecedented level of showmanship. He wore gold chains during games, performed elaborate end zone dances, and carried himself with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. For veterans like Rice, who had been raised on the principles of hard work, humility, and team-first mentality, Sanders represented everything that was wrong with the new generation of NFL players. The psychological warfare between Rice and Sanders began immediately. Rice would later reveal that Sanders' presence kept him up at night, requiring intricate release techniques like double or triple moves to gain separation. This wasn't mere frustration, it was motivational torture. Rice explained, "As a competitor, you want to go against the best to test yourself." But the intensity of their rivalry went beyond just mental games. In a brutally honest admission on Kevin Hart's Cold as Balls podcast, Rice revealed the raw truth about his feelings. "I hated that guy, man. We couldn't get along." The pain in Rice's voice was evident as he explained how Sanders made his job exponentially harder, forcing constant planning and preparation that other receivers simply didn't have to endure. The numbers tell only part of the story. Over 10 head-to-head matchups, excluding their teammate year, Rice amassed 60 receptions for 1,051 yards and 10 touchdowns, while Sanders recorded 4 interceptions. But Sanders' impact transcended statistics. Quarterbacks often avoided his side of the field entirely, a testament to his shutdown ability that drove receivers like Rice to the brink of madness. What made this rivalry particularly fascinating was how it reflected a broader cultural shift happening within the NFL during the early 1990s. Rice represented the old guard, players who believed in earning respect through consistent performance, hard work, and humility. Sanders, on the other hand, embodied a new era of athletes who weren't afraid to celebrate their success, market themselves as brands, and challenge the traditional shut-up-and-play mentality that had dominated professional sports for decades. The tension wasn't just about playing styles, it was about philosophy. Rice had been taught that football was a team sport where individual accolades should take a back seat to collective success. Sanders, meanwhile, understood that in the emerging era of sports entertainment, individual personality and marketability were just as important as on-field performance. This fundamental disagreement about what it meant to be a professional athlete would fuel their rivalry for years to come.
We went at it. I mean, folks would stop to see us go at it. Mac was the same way, man. Mac was a dog, man.
Right.
And Mac had a whole different type of game. And Jerry was too. Andre Rison was a dog.
Right.
Yes, I played with some guys that can go to work, and we went to work in practice. But Jerry and I, because of the previous battles, the practice against him, it was very interesting.
Even Deion himself acknowledged the special nature of their battles, recognizing that their practice sessions became must-see events for other players and coaches. The mutual respect was there, buried beneath layers of competitive animosity and philosophical differences. But Rice's revelations about his hatred for Sanders went deeper than just on-field competition. In his Sports Illustrated column, Rice elaborated on the psychological toll. "I couldn't sleep the night before when I knew he'd be covering me." This admission reveals just how much Sanders had gotten into Rice's head. A master craftsman of route running and precision, was being reduced to sleepless nights by a flashy cornerback who seemed to play the game with an entirely different rule book. The irony wasn't lost on Rice that his hatred for Sanders ultimately made him a better player. As he would later reflect, it wasn't mere frustration, it was motivational, as Rice noted, suggesting this dynamic pushed both to excellence. The biblical principle of iron sharpens iron was playing out in real time on NFL fields across the country. What Rice didn't know in those early years of their rivalry was that fate would soon throw them together in a way that would test not just their competitive spirits, but their ability to coexist as teammates pursuing a common goal. The stage was being set for one of the most dramatic plot twists in NFL history, a twist that would take their hatred to an entirely new level, while ultimately transforming it into something else entirely. The explosion that almost destroyed a Super Bowl team. The year 1994 brought a seismic shift that nobody in the NFL world saw coming. After 5 seasons of terrorizing receivers in an Atlanta Falcons uniform, Deion "Primetime" Sanders made a decision that would send shockwaves throughout the league and set the stage for one of the most explosive teammate relationships in professional sports history. Sanders' move to the San Francisco 49ers wasn't just a simple free agency signing, it was a calculated chess move designed to address the team's glaring weakness that had cost them back-to-back NFC championship losses to the Dallas Cowboys. The 49ers, despite having Jerry Rice and a high-powered offense, had been repeatedly burned by the Cowboys' aerial attack, and management knew they needed elite cornerback help to get over the hump. But bringing Sanders to San Francisco meant more than just adding talent to the roster. It meant forcing Jerry Rice, a man who had openly admitted to hating Sanders, to not only coexist with his nemesis, but to rely on him for team success. The psychological dynamics were unprecedented. Imagine being forced to work alongside someone who had been your professional tormentor for 5 years, someone whose very presence had kept you awake at night preparing for battle. Rice, known as the heart and soul of the 49ers organization, initially harbored serious doubts about Sanders' fit within the team's culture. Here was a player who represented everything Rice believed was wrong with modern football: flashy, individualistic, more concerned with personal brand than team success. How could someone like that possibly mesh with the 49ers, the tradition of hard work, preparation, and collective achievement? The tension was palpable from day one. Rice's frustration with their previous playoff losses to the Cowboys had been building for years, and now he was being asked to trust the very type of player he believed epitomized everything that was wrong with the league. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The 49ers were essentially betting their championship hopes on the marriage of two completely incompatible football philosophies.
I never disliked someone. If someone talked about me, that's the misconception. I never talked on the field. No. Now, you did. You talked like the best.
I was provoked.
You was provoked. No, some people you ain't like though. Some people you ain't like, and you did your homework, and you found out everything, and you talked about it like a dog.
Sanders' own words revealed the calculated nature of his mental warfare, acknowledging that he knew exactly how to get under opponents' skin through detailed preparation and psychological manipulation. But now, instead of using these tactics against Rice, he would have to channel them toward helping the team succeed. The cultural clash became evident immediately in practice. Rice, who had built his legendary career on meticulous preparation, early arrivals, and exhaustive film study, watched as Sanders approached the game with a more relaxed, confident demeanor. Where Rice saw lackadaisical attitude, Sanders saw supreme confidence in his natural abilities. Where Sanders saw uptight perfectionism, Rice saw the work ethic that separated champions from pretenders. But despite their philosophical differences, something magical began to happen on the field. The 49ers, armed with Sanders' shutdown coverage ability, began to see a dramatic improvement in their defensive performance. performance. Sanders' presence allowed the team to implement more aggressive defensive schemes, knowing they had elite coverage on one side of the field. Meanwhile, Rice continued to dominate on offense, his motivation perhaps even higher knowing that his former nemesis was now counting on him for success. The regular season proved that the marriage of convenience could work, at least, on a professional level. The 49ers steamrolled through their schedule, with Sanders providing the defensive backbone they had desperately needed while Rice continued his assault on NFL record books. But as the team prepared for the playoffs, underlying tensions that had been simmering beneath the surface were about to explode in the most dramatic fashion possible. The setting was perfect for disaster. Super Bowl XXIX, the culmination of everything the 49ers had worked toward. They had finally overcome the Cowboys in the NFC Championship, with Sanders playing a crucial role in neutralizing Dallas's passing attack. Now, just days before the biggest game of their careers, the fragile peace between Rice and Sanders would be tested in a way that nearly tore apart the team's championship dreams. The incident that would become legendary in 49ers lore began with Sanders' decision to break team curfew before the Super Bowl. In an era where preparation and focus were considered sacred, Sanders' choice to party violated everything Rice believed about proper championship preparation. For Rice, who had emphasized the importance of focus and sacrifice, Sanders' actions represented the ultimate disrespect to the team and the moment. What happened next has been described by those present as one of the most intense confrontations in NFL locker room history. Rice, the normally composed and professional superstar, reached his breaking point. The months of suppressed frustration, the years of competitive hatred, and the pressure of the biggest game of their careers all combined into a perfect storm of conflict.
And that's it. That's what he said to me after. He said, man, I had nothing to lose.
Let's
So
bring
I was
out.
like, yeah, I don't want to experience that again.
Let's bring out Dorsey Johnson here. Yeah. Wherever Dorsey Johnson is.
The confrontation that followed was described by witnesses as explosive. Rice and Sanders exchanged very bad words in what nearly became a physical altercation. The weight of their years-long rivalry, combined with the pressure of the Super Bowl and their fundamental disagreements about professionalism, created a powder keg that nearly destroyed the team's chemistry at the worst possible moment. Rice's message to Sanders was crystal clear. When we go out there on the football field, we work. It's the Super Bowl. This wasn't just about curfew or partying. It was about respect, preparation, and what it meant to be a champion. Rice was essentially telling Sanders that his casual approach to the biggest game of their careers was unacceptable and potentially destructive to everything the team had worked toward. The confrontation could have been the end of the 49ers championship dreams. Team chemistry is fragile under the best of circumstances, and having two of your most important players at each other's throats days before the Super Bowl is typically a recipe for disaster. Players and coaches held their breath, wondering if the marriage of convenience between Rice and Sanders was about to collapse at the worst possible moment. But something remarkable happened in the aftermath of their heated exchange. Instead of fracturing the team, the confrontation seemed to refocus everyone on what was truly important. Sanders, perhaps recognizing the validity of Rice's concerns, recommitted himself to the team's preparation. Rice, having finally expressed his frustrations directly to Sanders, seemed to find a way to channel his energy toward positive outcomes. The Super Bowl itself became a testament to the power of shared goals overcoming personal differences. The 49ers demolished the San Diego Chargers 49-26. with both Rice and Sanders playing crucial roles in the victory. Rice, despite playing with a separated shoulder, suffered in the NFC Championship, not inflicted by Sanders, as some rumors suggested, delivered an MVP-caliber performance with 10 catches for 149 yards and 3 touchdowns. Sanders, meanwhile, provided the defensive backbone that had been missing from previous 49ers teams, helping to neutralize the Chargers' passing attack and validating the organization's faith in his abilities. The championship ring they both earned that day represented more than just football excellence. It symbolized the possibility of finding common ground even between the most unlikely allies. But as the confetti fell and the celebrations began, both Rice and Sanders knew that their story was far from over. Sanders' time in San Francisco would be brief, and soon he would make another shocking move that would reignite their rivalry in an even more dramatic fashion. The lessons learned from their explosive confrontation would serve both men well in the years to come as they continued to redefine what it meant to be competitors, teammates, and eventually something approaching friends. Why NFL legends really hated primetime. The relationship between Jerry Rice and Deion Sanders didn't end with their Super Bowl triumph in 1994. In fact, their story was about to take yet another dramatic turn that would test everything they had learned about coexistence and competition. Sanders' decision to join the Dallas Cowboys after just one season with the 49ers would reignite their rivalry with even more intensity, while simultaneously revealing the deeper reasons why so many NFL legends harbored genuine animosity toward prime time. Sanders' move to Dallas wasn't just a betrayal in Rice's Rice's eyes. It was the ultimate validation of everything he had suspected about Sanders' character. Here was a player who had just won a Super Bowl with the 49 ERs, who had been part of something special, choosing to join their most hated rivals for a bigger payday. For Rice, who valued loyalty and team commitment above all else, this move confirmed his worst fears about Sanders' priorities. But the Sanders-Cowboys pairing represented something even more threatening to the old guard of NFL legends. It wasn't just about one player switching teams, it was about the complete transformation of what it meant to be a professional athlete in America. Sanders wasn't just playing football, he was building a brand, marketing himself as entertainment, and fundamentally challenging the notion that athletes should be seen and not heard.
Yes, and then I thought, okay, this will be great. Deion's going to raise Brandon Marshall.
The broader NFL community's disdain for Sanders went far beyond his on-field performance. While his 8 Pro Bowl selections and 53 interceptions were undeniably elite, it was his approach to the game that rubbed veterans the wrong way. Sanders' reluctance to tackle on running plays, his flashy celebrations, and his dual sport pursuits in both NFL and MLB were seen as symptoms of a larger problem, a lack of respect for football's traditions and sacrificial culture. Andre Rison, another elite receiver who had his own complex relationship with Sanders, provided insight into the cultural tensions that Sanders created wherever he went.
It was an awesome move, but at the same time, I'm telling you, man, you 21 years old, you ain't been in the South. You like, I ain't going. You know, I'm not going down there. And, you know, years later, you become best of friends with Akon, best of friends with Big Meech, best of friends with, you know, all these just stars and entertainers, Deion Sanders, and all these people. So you don't know that coming.
Rison's perspective reveals how Sanders' celebrity status and entertainment connections set him apart from traditional football players. While most NFL players focus solely on football during their careers, Sanders was building relationships in music, fashion, and entertainment that would extend far beyond his playing days. This approach, while ultimately prescient and successful, was seen as a distraction and a lack of commitment by many of his peers. The tension reached a boiling point during a 1994 game when Rison and Sanders, former teammates turned rivals, engaged in a heated on-field altercation that included punches and chaos.
Yeah, and both of you were fined $7,500. Basically, I guess they're saying that Sanders was the instigator, but both you guys were at fault, so you both got a small fine.
I mean, you know, in the movie it's gonna be real good, you know. But football is a physical game.
Sanders would later call the incident stupid and ignorant, but the damage to relationships was already done. The fight symbolized the broader tensions between Sanders' approach to the game and the expectations of his peers. What made the hatred towards Sanders particularly complex was that much of it was rooted in jealousy and misunderstanding rather than legitimate grievances. Sanders was simply ahead of his time in understanding how to maximize his value as an athlete and entertainer. His confidence, which critics labeled as arrogance, was actually a sophisticated understanding of self-marketing and brand building that wouldn't become commonplace in professional sports for another decade. The criticism extended to Sanders' perceived selfishness on the field. Veterans pointed to his reluctance to engage in run support, his tendency to avoid contact, and his focus on interceptions over sound fundamental coverage. But these criticisms often ignored the strategic value Sanders brought to his teams. His mere presence on one side of the field often deterred quarterbacks from throwing in his direction, effectively removing half the field from opposing offenses. Rice himself would eventually come to understand this dynamic, though it took years for his perspective to evolve. In his later reflections, Rice acknowledged that his hatred for Sanders was motivational rather than personal, and that the rivalry ultimately pushed both players to higher levels of performance. The transformation of Rice's feelings towards Sanders represents a broader evolution in how NFL legends have come to view the primetime phenomenon. What once seemed like disrespect for the game's traditions is now recognized as innovation and forward thinking. Sanders wasn't destroying football culture. He was expanding it, making it more inclusive of personality and individual expression, while still maintaining elite competitive standards.
Father Time is undefeated. And that's what's wrong with our old heads, man. That's what we call those guys.
Even Brandon Marshall's reflection on aging athletes reveals how the old guard's resistance to change often stems from fear of irrelevance, rather than legitimate concerns about performance or character. The old heads that Marshall references represent a generation of players who struggled to adapt to the changing landscape of professional sports, where personality and marketability became just as important as pure athletic ability. Modern critics of the Sanders family, particularly targeting his sons Shadur and Shiloh, echo many of the same complaints that were leveled against Deion during his playing career. Accusations of arrogance, entitlement, and preferential treatment suggest that some of the underlying tensions between traditional football culture and the Sanders approach to the game persist even today. But Rice's eventual embrace of Sanders' coaching career at Jackson State in Colorado represents a significant evolution in their relationship. Rice has praised Sanders' work at HBCUs, recognizing their shared connection to historically black institutions and acknowledging the positive impact Sanders has had on young athletes. The current landscape of college football, with its emphasis on NIL deals, transfer portals, and personal branding, has vindicated many of Sanders' early approaches to the game. His understanding that athletes are entertainers as much as competitors, that personal brand matters, and that individual success can coexist with team achievement has become the norm rather than the exception.
It's personal. You think I'm gonna let them talk about y'all and it ain't gonna be personal? You think I'm gonna let them doubt y'all and it ain't gonna be personal? It's personal for real. Don't wanna hear no more talking. Let's do it. How about it? You got to feel that energy inside of you that we're coming. Oh my! Touchdown, Colorado! All you want is an opportunity to win. And darn it, I'm gonna give you that.
Sanders' passionate defense of his players and program demonstrates that his approach has always been about more than just self-promotion. His investment in his athletes' success, both on and off the field, reveals a depth of character that his early critics often overlooked. The story of Jerry Rice and Deion Sanders ultimately becomes a story about the evolution of professional sports, the tension between tradition and innovation, and the possibility of finding respect and understanding even between the most unlikely adversaries. Their journey from hatred to grudging respect to something approaching friendship mirrors the broader acceptance of Sanders' approach within the football community. Rice's final assessment of their relationship perhaps says it all. The rivalry between them was never really about personal animosity, but about two different philosophies of excellence competing for validation. Both approaches had merit, both produced champions, and both contributed to the rich tapestry of NFL history. The hatred that Rice and other NFL legends felt toward Sanders was real, but it was ultimately rooted in fear of change rather than legitimate character flaws. As the game has evolved to embrace many of the principles Sanders pioneered, that hatred has transformed into respect and even admiration for a player who was simply ahead of his time. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.